So after a very long process where the Jaguars were trying to find a head coach, the Jaguars finally landed one with Doug Peterson, and Doug Peterson didn't take very long to establish a coaching staff. It took 13 days from his opening press conference up until the day that he officially announced his whole entire coaching staff has been finalized. 13 days it took Doug Peterson to build his coaching staff. And now that that is set, now we can look forward to the next step of the NFL offseason, and that is NFL free agency. NFL free agency officially begins March 8th, actually March 14th. To give you guys some dates, March 8th is the day where you can place a franchise tag or a transitional tag on one of your upcoming free agents. The Jaguars most recently in 2021 used one on left tackle Cam Robinson. So that's the day you can do that, and no team can touch those players. And then March 14th is the day where negotiations can begin. I'm pretty sure that's the day where you start to get stuff leaked out that, okay, this guy has reached a 5-year deal with this team, and different rumors come out from everybody except for the official teams, because they can't really make it official up until March 16th, where the new NFL league officially begins, league year begins, and you can start really officially putting the ink to paper. So with all that said, this will be my 2022 Jacksonville Jaguars free agency preview. Now, the Jaguars do have a number of free agents coming up this offseason. Some of the most notable ones are left tackle Cam Robinson, wide receiver DJ Chark, right guard AJ Cann, center Tyler Shatley, defensive lineman Adam Gotsis, and offensive lineman Will Richardson. The Jaguars have a ton of cap space, $59 million to spend. That's up in the top 5 when it comes to most available cap in the NFL. And really, when you go into free agency, you have to have a typical plan. And even in offseason, like, what do you want to do? Last year, I was all on the train of, okay, we have a new rookie quarterback coming in. Let's make sure this guy we try to get him as much success early on as we can. When it comes to bringing in talent, building a good offense around them, just make sure that I don't care if the defense is that bad. I really don't. We can give up all these different points. We can address defense at another time. I want to make sure the offense is good for Trevor Lawrence. The Jaguars did not take that approach. The Jaguars spent last offseason more money on the defense, whether it be bringing in guys like Shaquille Griffin, safety Rayshon Jenkins, defensive lineman Roy Robertson Harris. And really all they did for the offense in the offseason was sign Marvin Jones, sign tight end Chris Manhertz, and running back Carlos Hyde. So they did not do a lot really to help out Trevor Lawrence. But that has to change. This offseason, look, you decide to go defense heavy. Now is a time where you have to address the offense, because when you look at it, the offense really lays all the biggest needs. I pretty much write down our biggest needs to be wide receiver, offensive line, defensive end, and tight end. Three out of those 4 are on the offensive side. So the first thing you want to start at is the trenches. The offensive line needs reconstructive surgery. Literally, when you look at this offensive line, there's nobody that is safe. I could very much see every single player on the offensive line that started the week 1 of 2021 being overturned and turned over and changed for another player. You look at the positions, and left tackle Cam Robinson, he's a free agent. So we'll see what happens there. Left guard Andrew Norwell, he's a free agent. Goodbye, in my opinion. And I forgot to write down Andrew Norwell, but he is a free agent. I don't know why I forgot to write him down, but he is a free agent, so I say goodbye, honestly. Center Brandon Linder is out there. So he's a guy that gets injured a good amount. We'll talk about him later. Right guard AJ Cann / Ben Barch. Ben Barch, I would probably give the edge over AJ Cann at this point, just because he's a cheaper option and he's got pretty good upside. I mean, he went into college as a tight end, converted to offensive lineman, and then he had a big jump from year 1 to year 2. So that's a player that, you can't spend a bunch of money and you can't address every single position. So I feel good about him potentially getting play at interior offensive line. And then right tackle Jawan Taylor. Jawan Taylor, he was pretty good his rookie year. Then the last 2 years, just not very good. A lot to be desired. And I feel like you can probably upgrade from Jawan Taylor. And not only that, he's going into a contract year. So had to decide at that position. So yeah, I mean, a lot needs to be addressed with this offensive line. The last 2 years, they didn't really do a lot. They pretty much had the same starting offensive lines the last 2 seasons, but now it's time to figure out, okay, what are we going to do with this spot? So when it comes to Cam Robinson, Cam Robinson was played under a franchise tag last year, and he's going to demand a good amount of money. He is, one of the top 2 or 3 tackles that's going to hit free agency. So the Jaguars had to make a decision about, okay, do we want to sign Cam Robinson, or potentially do we want to draft Evan Neal? And I think it's going to be really, really telling what we're going to do with the number 1 overall pick once free agency hits. Because look, if they let Cam Robinson walk and they don't sign any tackles, then there's a pretty good chance that the Jaguars are probably going to draft a tackle. But if they go out there and they sign Cam Robinson to a lot of money, then it's probably a good chance, and we don't address the defensive line. Like if we let Cam Robinson walk and we go ahead and sign on a guy like Chandler Jones as defensive end, it's pretty obvious what we're going to do. But when it comes to the flip side of it, if the Jaguars sign Cam Robinson to a lot of money and they don't address defensive end, they're probably going Aiden Hutchinson. So that's going to be very, very telling. Me personally, if I were doing things right now, especially after watching the Super Bowl, just watching Joe Burrow get killed, I want to make the offensive line as best as possible. I really do, because that's a foundation. I know the Bengals went to the Super Bowl by having a bunch of skill players, wide receivers, and stuff like that. But that is an exception, not the rule, where they get there with having a bad offensive line. I'm not going to sit there and feel comfortable with having Trevor Lawrence get hit like crazy, him holding his knee and being like, okay, it's all right. Everything's all right now. I want to make sure that's good. So the question begs to be asked is, okay, well, Evan Neal is a left tackle. Evan Neal is a left tackle. Walker Little is a left tackle. So what are you going to do there? Look, I don't know who's going to play what position, but I do know that Evan Neal has played right tackle before, and so has Walker Little. So I'm not at practice. I don't know what Walker Little's progression is there, but I figure out what to do. Both those guys are on the field, so you figure out what's the best left tackle to right tackle combination, and you roll forward with it. And then boom, you have a very cheap Walker Little for the next 3 years. You have a very cheap Evan Neal for the next 4 or 5 years, with that 5th-year option. And as well as Trevor Lawrence, you got a cheap quarterback. Then you can allocate a lot of money toward a lot of other positions. So that's one thing that I really like. And now we have to figure out the interior of the offensive line. Obviously, Andrew Noel, free agent, goodbye. We have to figure out what to do to replace him. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of great guards hitting free agency. The best one out there by far is Brandon Scherff, who is a 5-time Pro Bowler. He's an All-Pro. He's like 30 or 31 years old, but he's going to be expensive. And he also plays right guard. So we might be in a situation where, if we really want to upgrade this offensive line, draft Evan Neal, sign Brandon Scherff, move Brandon Scherff, keep him at right guard, test out Ben Barch or AJ Cann, figure out, kind of go cheap at that spot, play them at left guard, and then at center, you do the Brandon Linder with the typical Tyler Shatley handcuff. We all play fantasy football. You draft Dalvin Cook number 1, you want to get his handcuff. It's kind of similar with the Jaguars with Brandon Linder, who unfortunately with Brandon Linder, in the last 3 out of the last 4 years, the maximum amount of games he's played is 9 games. So, he's just never really completely available the whole entire season. So it's probably what I would do. I would love to roll with a, Walker Little / Evan Neal combo at tackle, then left guard Ben Barch, center Brandon Leonard / Tyler Shatley, right guard Brandon Scherf. I think that would be an amazing way to move forward with this offensive line. So now we go to the wide receiver room. The wide receiver room obviously needs a lot of work, like a lot of work, man. Like when you're I bring back the Super Bowl because that's what we achieved to be. I look around there and, the Rams have Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Odell Beckham Jr., they have Robert Woods, who was on the IR or whatever, but still, they had him. On the other side of the ball, on the other team, you had Jamar Chase, Tyler Boyd, T. Higgins. Like, man, look at all these receivers, and what do we have? Not much. I mean, this wide receiver room might be a 2-year rebuild. We might have to, each of the next 2 years, sign someone in free agency and draft. I don't know if this is a 1-year turnaround here. So right now, the Jaguars, kind of building blocks, Jamal Agnew, who I really liked, Marvin Jones, who's getting a little bit older, DJ Chark, who's a free agent, and Laviska Shenault. So the big thing is, what do we do with DJ Chark? I mean, there's a lot of pros and cons about DJ Chark. He runs a 4.3 40. He's 6'4", so he's very, very big, but he really, he's big and fast, but he really hasn't produced outside of 2019. Now, the beauty about the NFL is that if you really, really like a player, you can come up with a lot of defenses for a guy, excuses for a guy, and rightfully so in some cases with DJ Chark. He hasn't had great quarterbacks. He has had 4 different offensive coordinators in 4 years. Never really had the great head coach, whatever. But on the flip side of it, when I look at DJ Chark, if you run a 4.3 40, and another bad thing about him is that he's never had a healthy season. So that's that too. So when I look at DJ Chark, I look at some things like, okay, if you run a 4.3 40 and you're 6'4", why are you not a nightmare for defenses? He should be out there. And why? How come when he's on the field, he doesn't feel fast to me? He just doesn't. There seems to be a lot of inconsistencies in his game. And I don't really know what's stopping him. We've seen great wide receivers overcome bad quarterbacks. DeAndre Hopkins did it back in the day. DeAndre Hopkins had TJ Yates, Brandon Weeden, Tom Savage, a whole bunch of bad quarterbacks, but he still produced at a very high level. So with DJ Chark, the best thing I would still find a way to keep him around, maybe sign him to like a 1-year prove-it deal, because he's the kind of guy that, look, a team might offer him a multi-year deal, but it might be selling him short based on what he can potentially do. But at the same time, his best bet for himself is to bet on himself, sign a 1-year deal, go out and explode, have a 1,300-yard season with 11 touchdowns, and boom, then teams will be really looking for his services and trying to lock him down long term. So, he'll probably sign a similar deal to like a Dante Moncrief did a few years ago for the Jaguars. And look, if we don't wind up keeping Cam Robinson, maybe you slap a franchise tag on him. I know it's going to be a high number, but it's all cap coming from next season. So, he'll be off the books the following season. So I don't really know what the complete harm in that is. So yeah, that's what happens with DJ Chark. And it's really, really hard looking at free agency because, you look at the list. Oh man, Devontae Adams, free agent. Chris Godwin, free agent. You got Michael Gallup, free agent. This is awesome. But all these teams have implied that they do want to keep him around. So you really don't know who's going to be available, unfortunately. And there might be a chance that a bunch of these guys get swept up and you are kind of left with DJ Chark, and then you have to find somebody in a draft. And this is one position. I'm not going to try to make trades for a lot of other spots, but this might be a position that I might get creative and try to strike a trade with a team. You know what I mean? So the Seahawks might be willing to move DK Metcalf. I'd go out there and do my homework. What do you want? I would trade number 33 overall pick for DK Metcalf. Apparently, the Cowboys want to maybe move on from Amari Cooper. Maybe I give him one of our 3rd round picks, whether it be our 3rd round pick or the Panthers' 3rd round pick that we got for CJ Henderson. Go out and do your homework on that. Maybe even, do our homework on Calvin Ridley. Calvin Ridley is an awesome receiver. I don't know what's going on up here, and I don't know what the deal with that over there is, but man, if talk about a perfect wide receiver fit for us, a guy that's fast, a guy that creates separation, a great route runner. It's just, we don't, like I said, we don't know what's going on upstairs, and don't pretend like you know either unless you know him personally. So it might be a fresh start for both sides that they're saying. So wide receiver, that one's tricky. You're definitely drafting a guy. You definitely had to draft a guy in the top 3 rounds. I'm hoping pick number 33. I mean, I'm hoping maybe we can move back in the draft, pick up some extra picks, and then boom, we don't have to be pigeonholed into taking one high. But obviously, those are hard to project. So wide receiver, and that's why I say this might be a 2-year project when it comes to that. So. And that's why I say maybe get creative and try to strike up a trade somehow. So the next position is the tight end position. Lots of good tight ends going to be available, whether you want older guys or younger guys. Some guys of note: Mike Gesicki, Zach Ertz, C.J. Uzomah, Robert Tonyan, O.J. Howard, Hayden Hurst, Evan Ingram, David Njoku. A bunch of, this tight end group is a lot richer than the interior offensive line group, and probably what the wide receiver group is going to shake out to be. So that's, I imagine, especially with Doug Peterson. Doug Peterson loves his tight ends, and I do love Dan Arnold. He's a great building piece. So I do think we can bring in another guy, then boom, we might have a decent tight end room. I don't remember the last time any Jaguar fan has said, we have a good tight end room. Maybe we thought we would have when we had Julius Thomas and Mercedes Lewis, but never worked out that way. So obviously, hopefully we can make that room great again. And then that leaves quarterback position. Obviously, you have Trevor Lawrence. You have CJ Beathard. You don't really have to do anything there. Running back situation, we appear to be pretty good, even though they're James Robinson and Travis Etienne, both coming off pretty bad injuries. James Robinson, the Achilles. Travis Etienne, the Liz Frank. Hopefully he comes back good, because that's a pretty scary injury. But yeah, that's kind of the offensive preview. That's obviously a lot of things need to go down, but not being very proactive a season ago in free agency, and even, a little bit of the draft, made it to where this might be a little bit more of a need. But maybe Travis Etienne can help out the wide receiver room a little bit if they figure out how to use them, similar to like how the 49ers use Deebo Samuel. Maybe we find our own role for Travis Etienne. I mean, Deebo Samuel said, I'm a wide back. I'm my own position. We need to figure out how to turn Travis Etienne into a wide back to make up for, maybe the wide receiver room not being all that great. So we'll obviously continue to monitor that, and hopefully we actually do spend some money this offseason. Now, when you go to the defensive side of the ball, this seems like we're set in a lot of positions. We just have to, I think, get some depth, maybe get some guys that provide some high upside. I mean, when you look at guys, the safeties are good between Rayshon Jenkins and Andre Sisco. Even Daniel Thompson is pretty good, and they have even they have Andrew Wingard under contract. If that does anything for you guys. The cornerback position between Shaquille Griffin and Tyson Campbell, they both had pretty good years. You have to figure out what you want to do at the nickel spot, because we had a bunch of guys between Trey Herndon. They had a couple of other guys, Nevin Lawson. They had the Rudy Ford playing a nickel spot. Got to figure out what you're doing there, but usually nickels can come pretty cheap. Linebacker between Damian Wilson and Miles Jack, you got to think those positions are pretty good. And I think that's just the big overriding need, is that the Jaguars need to find another impact defensive end. You have Josh Allen. I think he's like a defensive end 2, outside linebacker 2, whatever you want to call that position. And then you have Dwan Smoot, who's like a number 3. I mean, they need to get a guy that can create pressure on a quarterback and can be a guy that teams really have to game plan for. I would love to figure out a way to bring Chandler Jones in here. A dream offseason would be Chandler Jones, and then having Brandon Scherf on the offensive line, and then figuring out how to bring in some good wide receiver talent and tight end talent. That would be an awesome offseason to me. So some other defensive ends out there. There's Randy Gregory as well. Emmanuel Ogbah might be some solid choices. And there's also like Von Miller and Jadeveon Clowney, although I feel like those guys may not have any interest in coming to the Jaguars, but you never know. You could give them a show me the money situation. And, sometimes with these guys, they only get so many big contracts. Sometimes they like to follow the money, but we're definitely not going to be getting any kind of Jaguar discount. We're going to have to pay the Jacksonville tax. Hopefully the lack of state income tax will offset that Jacksonville tax. But yeah, those are kind of my free agency preview. I don't have, and like I said, free agency, it can be hard because you go into this and say, oh, we have this much available cap, but sometimes you don't have to spend all that much cap money. And sometimes it's wise not to spend that cap money. I mean, last year, if I asked you, would you rather have Kenny Galladay or Marvin Jones, you would have said, oh, give me Kenny Galladay. The Giants did that, and Kenny Galladay didn't really produce, and they spent a bunch of money on him. Sometimes it's better to get the base hits that aren't going to break your bank, that aren't going to really make you regret it years later. And last year, the Jaguars signed some solid guys, but now it's time to really strike. We need to have a 2017 type of offseason where we go out and, we spend some money on some guys. Obviously it's also hard because some of these guys are going to get picked up, by their own teams, because any one of these teams can sign these guys at any moment. And, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I'm excited for it. I'm hoping that Doug Peterson has some big say on what goes on in free agency, and maybe we have an EVP at that time. Obviously, I still don't trust Trent Baalke, even though Trent Baalke, I think he had a pretty decent offseason last year, but I still don't trust him. Maybe it's maybe everybody's brainwashing me, but I don't trust him. So we got to figure out what to do when it comes to all that different stuff. So let me know what you guys want to do this offseason. Let me know if I'm crazy in some of my beliefs. Love to hear from you guys. And guys, I'm about 20 subscribers away from 13,000. So if you aren't already subscribed, please subscribe to me. Help me hit that number. Drop a like on the video. Follow me on my socials at UCF_Jaguar. Hit up the Relevant app and join the Jaguars Fanatics Vibe for weekly podcasts that I do exclusively on Relevant with former Jaguars linebacker Tom McManus. Go over there and join that. And yeah, with all that said, thank you guys for watching. Go Jags.